Members, it's time and we have a quorum. I call to order the meeting. Item 1 on the agenda, information paper issued since the last meeting. I actually have a question for the officials on this paper, but they're not yet here, so let's move on to item 2 first. Items for discussion at the next meeting. The administration proposes to discuss the progress update on enhancement of NTBR facilities and customer experience at the next meeting. Members, do you have any views on that? No? Then we accept that proposal. Item 3 on the agenda, coping measures of the railway system during extreme weather conditions. Let's invite the administration to join us first. And members who wish to speak, please press the request to speak button. Yes, yes. That's why I have questions too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to welcome Ms. Ida Lee, Deputy Secretary for Transport and Logistics, and her team. And from the MTRCL, Ms. Jenny Yeung is leading her team. So please take your seat. Oh, my apology, you have to sit on 2 separate sides. Deputy Secretary. Now, the administration gave a response gave supplementary information to our meeting last time. I have some follow-up questions. If you could answer them today, it's great. Otherwise, please give us further written information first. Mr. Tony Chair also raised a point. Point B. Internal rate of return for the Kwu Tung station and also the Tuen Mun East station. Now, for the Tuen Mun South extension, the internal rate of return is only 0.6%. For the Kwu Tung station, you assess the internal rate of return to be 6.5%, which makes more sense. Now, for 0.6% is really low. So do you have any internal target or index? So as long as it's not a negative figure, then you will proceed. Is that the case? It's just a straightforward question like that. Can you answer that now? Mr. Chairman, about the Tuen Mun South extension, well, I don't have the information at hand. Perhaps I will provide a reply in writing. Thank you. Mr. Tony Chair. Yes, for the administration's reply dated the 13th of December, A, the capital cost. Now, in December 2015, the figure was $3 billion, but then by July 2023 is $5.9 billion, so it's a 70% jump. Can you explain why that's the case? Is it because of the time frame, or are there other factors? And then on page 2, the last line. Now for or page 3 rather, on the top, the Highways Department will carefully review the project estimates prepared by the MTRCL, and then the government will have taken into account the construction costs as well as revenues and expenditures of MTRCL during the operation period, including daily operation maintenance and asset replacement. I don't quite follow. Here we're talking about the capital cost, so how come you are talking about the asset replacement, daily operation and maintenance and so on? Is it the case that the capital costs already cover future maintenance costs? Can you clarify that, please? Deputy Secretary, are you going to give us a reply later in writing? Yes, correct. And if that's the case, there's nothing else. We move on to item 3 now. Coping measures of the railway system during extreme weather conditions. There are 2 documents. I'm sure you've all got it. Now, I'll ask the administration and the MTRCL to take us through the paper. Deputy Secretary, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Now, during inclement weather, the first and foremost priority is to ensure the safety of the public. So, where conditions allow, the MTRCL has been trying to provide a highly efficient railway service to the public to facilitate their commuting. At the same time, the MTRCL has to consider the risks of operation during inclement weather. They have to ensure the safety of passengers and their staff. Now, there was torrential rain in September, and then we had Typhoon Kanu in October. As a result of the experience, the MTRCL has reviewed the in contingency plans in such extreme weather. They are implementing various measures to minimize the impact on railway operations during extreme weather. For example, there are further preventive and contingency measures. They're enhancing their tools and gears, and then they are considering exploring the use of new technology to help them in coping with extreme weather. And also, where possible, the MTRCL will enhance passenger information and public education so the public will better understand the arrangement of railway services during extreme weather. And then there will be a strengthening of passenger care for those stranded at stations. This is to minimize inconvenience caused to them. The administration will closely follow up on the measures to be implemented at MTRCL and see if they're effective. Hopefully before the next typhoon or rain this season, then all the additional measures are in place. We want to ensure the safety of railway operation and minimize the impact on the public, and that's our goal. And now the MTRCL will explain their risk management and coping strategy in extreme weather. They also explain their review work and improvement measures they are going to put in place. And then we'll be happy to take questions. Yes, thanks. Thank you. Who will take us through the paper? Thank you, Ida. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will briefly go through the subject just mentioned by Ida. As you know, in October and September last year, we've encountered a series of extreme weather conditions. And you might recall we faced immense challenge in terms of our railway operation. Now, we've always had comprehensive measures to cope with extreme weather. This is to ensure the safety of railway facilities, passengers, and staff. And also, we've been keeping in close liaison with relevant departments such as the Transport Department, Fire Services Department, the police, and so on. And then today, I would like to briefly explain the measures we take during extreme weather. But perhaps at the beginning, I could just briefly say that in the previous incidents, MTRC staff, in particular frontline staff, responded swiftly. They made an immense effort and they worked day and night to repair the facilities. So they've made a huge contribution. I hope you note that, and I take this opportunity to thank them. Now, coping with extreme weather is a global issue. It's not just a local issue. Now, we've experienced torrential rain and typhoons recently. And then with extreme weather, there is also the issue of rising temperature, and that would bring about various challenges to railway operations. For example, rising temperature could lead to facilities breaking down because of the high temperature. It will often affect the health condition of our staff. As for there will also be rising sea level, and then there could be heavier and more frequent rainfall, causing flooding and even landslide. And if there is a super typhoon, then trees may fall, and there may be objects falling on the tracks or on overhead lines, causing damage to our facilities. Now, we are the primary public transport operator in Hong Kong. We have make use of our enterprise risk management framework to manage climate-related risks. And we have a three-pronged approach, as you could see, in responding to these issues. First, on flooding, we've always comply with the requirements of the Drainage Services Department in designing, constructing, and maintaining our flood protection and drainage systems. We also conduct regular inspections to strengthen the protection facilities. And you might recall, we might note now that for all entrances and exits of MTR stations, they are about 400 cm about the ground level. And then there are floodgates too that we can use, and in some places there is need to install flood stores, and we've done that. And in the case of emergency, we have procedures to follow in evacuating passengers in the station. Now, we want to reduce the impact of extreme climate on us. So before each typhoon season, we will carry out certain preparation. We will carefully inspect all the drainage systems, including nearby systems, to make sure that the drainage systems work when there's rainfall. And then we also make sure that our flood protection measures, such as drainage, such as floodgates and sandbags, are ready. And we arrange drills for our staff to familiarize themselves with the procedures so they can help passengers in case of emergencies. And then the emergency repair will also be carried out where it is safe. This is to make sure that we can maintain our service, or once service could be resumed, we're able to do so as soon as possible. Now, when the typhoon signal number 8 is hoisted, now usually, of course, most people don't need to go to work under the circumstance, but then we will maintain limited operations. And when typhoon signal number 9 or higher is hoisted, for all safety reasons, we will suspend all operations in the open sections of our railway system, including the Airport Express line. But then for railway operations in tunnels, they will be maintained, but of course the services will be limited. Now, we must stress that we do that because we have to consider the safety of the railway system. And also, we've had years of experience with typhoons, and we know that typhoons may bring about various risks. For example, train cars designed having regard to various factors, including wind speed, train speed, and the road section, the conditions of the road sections. Now, if a train becomes immobilized at open sections, then our staff and passengers may be under threat, and there will be various challenges if we need to rescue someone under those circumstances. And in torrential rain or in typhoon, especially when it's typhoon signal number 9, the weather condition may change rapidly. And so it's a huge challenge to the safe operation of railway services. Our trains operate on fixed railway track system. It's not possible for them to make road diversion or go around. They just have to keep going. And then there may be foreign objects blown onto overhead lines or tracks, and so a train may not be able to operate or even derail. On the 7th and 8th of September last year, you might recall there was torrential rain. So MTR stations and railway services were affected to varying degrees. Of course, on the whole, we believe our flood protection facilities were effective, but then in certain stations, for example, Wong Tai Sin Station, there was serious flooding. You might recall on that night, Wong Tai Sin was in the center of the rain belt, and there was rapid and heavy rain. And given the geographical condition, there was serious flooding in a short space of time in the station. And then on that evening, the MTRCL closed the station in line with our procedures. We reacted swiftly. So our contractors and lessees and so on were able to evacuate in good time. So we were able to protect their safety. Now, for colleagues in the station and in the operations control center, they were able to react swiftly, and the train service did not stop at the station. So that's why we were able to minimize the impact. And then through various channels, we such as the media, Facebook, and other internet mobile, we try to disseminate information to the public. We want to make sure that our railway services system could be repaired as soon as possible. So on that night, our staff worked overnight and through to the second day. And they try to clear all the debris and objects and clear the flooding. And then for facilities and devices that broke down, they try to repair them. So that's why on the 9th of September, we were able to resume service. Well, you might have read from the news that at a large number of facilities such as escalators, the toll machines and so on, they were damaged because of the flooding. But then because of our emergency repair work, the services could be resumed the following day. Of course, we kept in liaison with stakeholders in the district. After the incident, we conducted a review. We hope to improve our capacity to cope with such extreme cases. And so before the rainy season this year, we're going to take additional measures, especially for the more vulnerable station entrances and exits. For example, exit B3 of the Wong Tai Sin station, we will add flood gates because it takes more time to close flood doors, so floodgates work faster. And then when there's serious flooding, to cope with severe flooding, we are doing more emergency drills at vulnerable stations. And also we will have better monitoring of the situation of emergencies. And then we are going to bring forward the triennial extra weather and climate change impact study for MTR premises. We engage a consultant to carry out the study to see where we could further enhance our measures. And then where the conditions is safe, we will explore the use of motorized or inflatable dam to prevent flood water from going into our station. Now, safety is always our first priority. When there's typhoon number signal 9, we need to suspend some train services. Definitely someone will be affected. But as a result of our experience from the last typhoon and so on, we will enhance the dissemination of information about stations so the public will be kept informed of our latest services. And then we're going to keep bigger stock of snacks, water, and so on to offer to passengers stranded at stations. We will also keep in closer communication with stakeholders, and then we will enhance awareness. And before the typhoon season, we will further educate the public and our staff on the arrangement when there's typhoon number signal 8 or 9. And to make sure we can provide safe and reliable railway services, well, that's our primary mission. So as we implement the various measures, we will engage a consultant to do a further review so that we could further enhance our capacity to cope with extreme weather. Thank you.
咁喺各位委員之前呢，我想提一提大家呢，就按議事規則第83A 條嘅規定，各位委員就今日會議嘅討論事項，如有任何直接或者間接嘅金錢利益嘅話，應該喺發言前呢係披露有關利益嘅性質嘅。咁我而家見到呢，有8位委員呢係按咗鈕，咁我哋應該今日有充足時間嘅嗱，咁咧就先係每人5分鐘，咁希望大家守好呢個時間啦。有時間我會進行第二輪嘅。咁就喺田北辰第2位，我先讀嗰啲名先好冇？第1位陳紹雄議員、田北辰議員、謝偉銓議員、周小松議員、陸頌雄議員、張欣宇議員、盧偉國議員同埋劉業強議員嘅。咁我會喺田北辰議員發言完畢之後呢，就劃線啊。咁希望大家留意個時間。第1位陳紹雄議員5分鐘。
好啊，多謝主席。舊年9月、10月香港接連遭遇呢個即係世紀嘅暴雨同埋超級颱風。 咁啊導致到鐵路服務分別因為嚴重水浸同埋9號風球停駛、交通嘅停擺，令到市民滯留機場同埋港鐵站情況比較混亂。咁但係事實上就喺經過搶修之後呢，港鐵喺第2日就已經基本上恢復大部分嘅公共嘅鐵路服務。咁呢個我就覺得對於港鐵嘅員工呢，就應該表示感謝，因為見到佢哋日以繼夜去搶修。咁啊，同時間我哋又引起關注，就係話喺搶修嘅時候，
want to know that for emergency repairs, what have they done specifically regarding the measures mentioned by the MTR representative? I do not see any guidelines in particular or risks as to what they face and what they should do or should not do. I'm glad that the MTRCL is providing employees with equipment, but I can see from certain media reports that employees had to work when the water level was as high as their chest. This is, of course, undesirable. While we do want to ensure the safety of passengers, we also have to ensure the safety of staff members. I can see in paragraph 4 and paragraph 8 that, for example, most of the entrances and exits of MTR stations are at least 450 millimeter above street level. So for the rest of them, is it, as you said in paragraph 8, that they will be the more vulnerable entrances and exits? What I want to ask is if the MTRCL can make sure all the improvement measures can be implemented before rainy season this year. And regarding contingency plans, it is important that beforehand you need to have the alert system in place. So you need to work with both the Water Supplies Department, Drainage Services Department, and the Hong Kong Observatory on that. Is there a liaison mechanism to make sure there is coordination? Because what happened last time was it was too late to put the floodgates down. If you had made the decision to close the station early, you would really need the information beforehand to make such decision. Thank you. Ms. Jenny Young. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for your questions. On that night in Wong Tai Sin Station, those employees who decided to go into the tunnel had made an assessment of the risks beforehand. They were familiar with that section of the tunnel. They have made the decision to go down there after assessing the risk factors. There were other people there as well. They were not there to carry out repairs. They just wanted to check whether there was indeed a clog. But of course, we will conduct a review to see if we need to provide them with additional equipment or how to better ensure their safety. Regarding the different equipment available at stations, we will monitor the situation at different entrances and exits, and depending on each entrance or exit's condition, and if there is bound to be heavy rainfall in that area, we will implement the appropriate measures based on such circumstances. Some weather conditions may come really quickly, and regarding whether we can implement the measures in time. Before, it was only under black rainstorm signal that we would put up the floodgates or floodboards. But now we know that there are some entrances or exits that are more vulnerable, so we would put up the gates or boards at those places under red rainstorm signal. I want to ask Ms. Jenny Yeung, what is the definition of more vulnerable? What are the entrances or exits that are less than 450 millimeter above street level? Will you be able to make sure they are protected before this rainy season? Thank you. We have engaged a consultant, and the consultant has considered the condition of all the entrances or exits in Wong Tai Sin because the station is located further underground. That's why it's more vulnerable. We are now know where the more vulnerable entrances exits are. For example, Choi Hung or some stations on Hong Kong Island. We do see that in the last rainstorm we have done more protection measures at the more vulnerable entrances and exits, and those measures have worked, but we will further review the measures. Thank you. Ms. Jenny Yeung, I want to ask if you have identified all shortcomings before typhoon season and have implemented the appropriate measures. Yes, that is correct. Thank you. Excuse me, Chair. If they are confident, can they provide a checklist of some sort to let citizens know what the more vulnerable exits or entrances are, just for citizens' reference? Well, I believe that can be provided after the meeting. Thank you. Mr. Michael Tian. I have some questions for Ms. Jenny Yeung. Unfortunately, I don't have any questions for Ms. Ida Lee. So when Typhoon Ko-Inu hit Hong Kong, there were certain sections of the MTR that were suspended, and many were stranded on the Tuen Ma line in Tuen Wan West Station. It would take approximately 75 minutes to go on the Tuen Ma line to Wu Kai Sha Station. So when people got on the train in Tuen Mun Station, it was still under typhoon signal number 8. And when typhoon signal number 9 was hoisted, they don't even know where they would have to get off the train. So they would often get stranded in the middle of nowhere. So, of course, you should disseminate the information to the affected passengers, whether they are waiting in the stations or on the train, to let them know where the train is going to stop after typhoon signal number 9 is hoisted, so that passengers at least know what they should do and where they would have to get off. So it will happen again that they would be stranded in Tuen Wan West Station, that they can't take any other forms of transport. Regarding Exhibit B of Wong Tai Sin Station, last time there was sudden heavy rainfall and floodgates had to be put up by staff members. Even if you have increased the number of drills, I don't think it is effective. When there is black rainstorm signal, you should know that there are 20-odd stations that would have additional manpower deployed to monitor the situation of entrances and exits. So when the water level hit a certain level, the water level sensor will issue an alert, and the staff member would be monitoring the sensor alert specifically. So when there is black rainstorm signal, that would happen. But then if you have to close the entrance or exit, it would be inconvenient to the public because they would have to go to another entrance and exit. Well, thank you for your comments. In our experience last time, we have observed that has happened, and in future under typhoon signal number 9, if it cannot go to the terminus, we will inform passengers of where the train will stop so that passengers will have other options. I'll let Charis talk about future arrangements to implement.
Yes, Ms. Charis Lee. Thank you, Chairman. Now, what we are going to do is that when it's the rainstorm warning already, we will deploy additional staff to the black spot stations. We want to deploy staff earlier and also want the vulnerable stations with vulnerable exits to be prepared earlier to lower the floodgate or flood door when necessary. We will also assess the safety of the passenger and the ingress and egress points for passengers. And then we're also going to install more sensors so that we will be alerted earlier whether there is any flooding near the vulnerable exits and entrances. So that means, in response to my question, both of you are guaranteeing that you will do that, right? How many black spots do you have? We have identified 26 stations with 42 vulnerable entrances and exits. It's based on our past experience and the geographical location. So you mean it's not even the black rainstorm warning? As soon as there is the red rainstorm warning, you deploy additional staff. Where do the staff come from? Well, we deploy staff from other less affected stations, and also we will also deploy repair staff to come and help. Perhaps KH could tell you about our new plan. Well, it's mentioned in the paper. Perhaps you could explain that, taking this opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the question. Now, in our review, we conclude that we will need additional rescue facilities and also additional tools and gears to clear blockage of trains. And then for vulnerable exits, there are 3 facilities that were put in place. First, for all the vulnerable stations, we're going to add more sensors, water level sensors. And then at the vulnerable entrances and exits, we are going to improve our CCTV facilities, that is closed circuit TV. Thirdly, where feasible, we will put the floodgates at more accessible locations. So these floodgates could then be deployed immediately as necessary. We hope that within March we were able to complete all these measures. Thank you. Before the next rainy season. Mr. Tony Chair, of course, we're seeing more extreme weather. There's need to take additional measures and upgrade certain facilities. And I think we all expect that. 2 questions for the MTRCL. First, for the new design, the new stations. Perhaps it will be easier for you to incorporate facilities because those are new stations. So my question is, what additional considerations are you going to give in designing new stations? And for existing stations, I'm sure you will do that. You say you're doing additional measures and you expect for them to be ready before the next rainy season. But then there may be some measures that take longer to implement. Now, for new stations, new rail lines, it's easy. There are no constraints. For existing stations, maybe some of them have certain constraints that make it impossible for you to provide additional measures. Can you tell us about that? And second question, for protection of facilities and for information dissemination, I hope you disseminate information earlier to inform the public, but it's also important to protect the railway system. Floodgates, flood doors, those are the measures you take. And then the Drainage Services Department is only recently explained to the public. Now, I went to Wong Tai Sin just last week. There were representatives from the Institute of Engineers and surveyors as well. And we see, drainage is more important than just trying to block out the flood water. So what can the government do in the vicinity in terms of the drainage system, so that when there's a torrential rain, then the water can be drained away more quickly? So is there any discussion between MTRCL and the government, and maybe for the vulnerable stations? Maybe if the government and the MTRCL could work better, then we will see better results. Well, actually, Mr. Chan Siu-hong also asked about cooperation with the government. So can you please respond to that? Let me try to answer Mr. Tony Tse's question, and then either from the government could talk about interdepartmental collaboration. Now, for any new line, our standard is that for any additional measures we're proposing will be included in the design in the design specifications of new lines. So for new lines, we will incorporate all that we've learned from our experience in operating old lines. Well, even for new lines, you should actually upgrade the design further instead of just copying what you're doing with the old lines. Now, well, of course, we will also make reference to good practice and see how we can do better. And then for existing lines, yes, there may be challenges. And if we want to install sensors, we need to make sure the sensors are so placed that there could be accurate measurement of the water level. And then you asked about other challenges. Maybe we want to put the floodgates closer to the entrances and exits, but it really depends on the geographical location. So these are the actual issues we have to consider. And Deputy Secretary? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Tony Tse is right. Now, MTRCL has to provide better prevention and coping measures in the stations. We also need to do some work in the vicinity of the station. We've been in discussion with relevant departments. For example, the Drainage Services Department could improve the drainage system. The observatory could do a better job in their alert system. So we hope that there will be better communication and more information. And then with more information, then the MTRCL could respond accordingly. You asked the Drainage Services Department to focus on the vulnerable stations to see what they can do before the rainy season. Or if it can be done immediately, but it could be done in the longer run, can you give us the information so the public will know what challenges the government faces and how they is responding proactively to these challenges? Yes, I agree. The government should do that, because you've identified 20 plus black spots with over 42 vulnerable entrances and exits. So which are the worst black spots before the rainy season? What are you going to do? So give us something in writing to put the mind of the public at ease. Mr. Chao Siu-chung. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the torrential rain in early September last year, everyone was caught off guard, but I must commend the MTR staff. They are so well trained. It was extreme weather, but no one was injured in the station. That means they handled the emergency properly. And then MTR was able to resume service quickly too. And then now usually when there's typhoon or black rainstorm warning, there would be serious flooding in some stations, but still MTRC staff are doing a good job. Now I have some questions on facilities. First, about the entrances and exits, they will be about 450 millimeters above street level. In other countries such as Taiwan and Singapore, it seems that ours is not as high. But of course, we can't have direct comparison. It depends on the drainage system of the city concerned as well. But this 45 cm standard, I think it's been in place for many years. And we're going to see more extreme weather. So for this 45 cm design, what kind of torrential rain can it cope with, so and is there room for reviewing the height? Second question is about floodgate. Now, it's manually operated now. For one Thai scene, well, it was used in September, but it wasn't used for the past 30 years before that. Will we need to use the floodgates again in future? We don't know. But we know that in September, 3 persons had to spend some 5 minutes trying to close the floodgate. Now, there was rapid flood water coming in. Staff could not close the gate fast enough, and that's why flood water went into the station. Yeah, I think, yes, you should turn those into motorized gates. You say there are some 42 vulnerable entrances and exits. So for all these entrances and exits, will you be eventually replacing the manual gate with motorized ones? And have you worked out how much it will cost? That's my one question. And the second question, now when there's typhoon signal number 9 or 10, you may have to operate the train services limitedly in a limited way, obviously, because you need to put the safety of passengers and staff first. As for stranded passengers, there needs to be better care. In the paper, you say you provide snacks, drinking water. Well, you've been doing that all along. So how are you going to enhance passenger care? Are you going to give them cup noodles, and that means you've enhanced the care? Now, for frontline staff, they face immense pressure under circumstances like that. Passengers were angry. They shouted at staff. Now, as we try to enhance passenger care for those stranded stations, what about the pressure that the staff face, as well as the needs of the passenger? Have you given more thought to that, Ms. Young? Well, I'll try to take some of the questions, and then KH will talk about the motorized gates. Put simply, we're not going to install motorized gates for all the 42 vulnerable exits because first we need to see whether it's feasible, and also there's the question of cost. Now, for the existing design, what kind of rainfall can we cope with? Now, our consultancy study is that for the 45 cm design plus the 1.2 meter flood water, that should cope with really heavy rainfall, and as we have seen in the last torrential rain. But of course, we'll have to wait for the review to see whether there is need for new parameters. As for what else we could do to help stranded passengers, apart from biscuits and drinking water, maybe we'll try to provide, include mats and blankets and so on to keep passengers warm, because we don't know what the weather condition is like. And then, in some stations we may not have enough chairs, so we'll see what else we can do. Mr. KH Lee. Yes, we follow the requirements of the drainage services in designing our facilities. Now, 45 cm above street level. That's one of the key major design. And then we also have 1.2 meters high flood boards. That's to minimize the risk of flooding. As for entrances and exits linked to shopping malls and so on, there are actually flood doors, so we could close the flood doors altogether. And then in tunnels, immersed tunnel sections, we have flood gates, say for undersea tunnels. So this is to prevent flood water from going into these tunnels. For floodgates, we are now actively doing a study where feasible we'll try out the motorized floodgates, and we have started our preparation for that. Thank you.
多謝主席。
Next, Mr. Lok Chung Hung. Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank the staff members who have worked in inclement weather conditions. I have several questions regarding suspension of service under Typhoon Signal number 9. The problem is, if the announcement was made somewhat suddenly, people will be caught by surprise. So is there a possibility of announcing early that train service will be suspended, or at least you can stop people from going through the gates? So I think that would be an arrangement that would be safer. As for staff working arrangements under Typhoon Signal number 9, I know that many employees are very dedicated and they are more than willing to work under Typhoon Signal number 9. But then they can get to work, but they may not be able to leave safely. They would have vehicles convey them to their place of work, but when they leave, they won't have any transport options. And if the typhoon signal is unhoisted, that may be time that have to work again. So is it possible for the MTRCL to arrange for vehicles to send employees home? I do understand the MTRCL has other safety considerations, but if you can provide that option, it would be great. Regarding the work of flood prevention, you said you would install additional gates at Wong Tai Sin Station. Will you review the flood prevention arrangements in other stations as well? And will you make sure such measures can accommodate unprecedented rainfall or potentially unprecedented rainfall in future, so that something like the Wong Tai Sin Station incident won't happen again? It was undesirable that employees had to work while immersed in water. I hope that you will have more detailed guidelines, or you will at least provide more protection for employees when they have to undertake such emergency repairs, and at least you should provide better protection for them. Thank you. Ms. Young, I agree with what Mr. Luke said about employees facing various difficulties. So we plan to, in future, under Typhoon Signal number 8, issue announcements to passengers. Of course, we don't know when Typhoon Signal number 9 will be hoisted, but we will make sure passengers know that under Typhoon Signal number 9, open sections will be closed and train service in those sections will be suspended. Before typhoon season of this year, we will implement some publicity campaign to make sure the public knows what the MTR's arrangements are under typhoon signals. Regarding employees getting off work, whether we can arrange transport options, we'll definitely review that to see how we can do better. Regarding employees going into sections where there is water, we will perhaps issue more detailed guidelines and see if we can improve the relevant arrangements. We, of course, would want to ensure safety of staff members when working, and we have emphasized time and again that they should protect themselves when working. Mr. Luke also asked about for employees who had to undertake emergency repairs, what they are going to do. Will you do something to help them get back home? Of course, as I said earlier, I think it's very important because if they have to stay in office and then they have to work again for the next shift, that is, of course, undesirable. So we will see if we can arrange some transport options. Well, Chair, they haven't responded to my question about their assessments of flood prevention capabilities of facilities of MTR stations in other stations. Well, in fact, for Wong Tai Sin Station alone, we have conducted reviews beforehand. We have tried to implement other improvement measures, not just for Wong Tai Sin Station, but also for Choi Hong Station, which had a minor incident. For other stations as well, we have conducted risk assessments of the facilities of other stations. Thank you, Mr. Gary Zheng. We have talked about arrangements under typhoons and when there is flooding. I will focus on the flooding part for my first round. If possible, I'll ask about typhoons in the second round. I have quite a lot of questions, so I perhaps can ask a question first and then the administration or the MTRCL can give an answer first. I understand that a study has been conducted. The last time that it was done, it was in 2021. And the study findings have identified 10 odd spots or 20 areas that are more vulnerable. They did not include Wong Tai Sin or Chai Wan. So why were these areas not included as more vulnerable spots? Is there something wrong with the assessment criteria? Thank you. I'll let KH answer that question. Mr. Lee, please. Thank you. In 2021, the consultant study was conducted, as you said, and we have made improvement measures based on the recommendations of the consultant. We have implemented for some stations and plant rooms some flood boards, and in entrances or exits, we have moved positions of flood gates to be somewhere more accessible. We have also enhanced training for staff members to respond to extreme weather conditions. In future, we will continue with our triennial study. We hope that we can complete the study this year and we can further improve our flood prevention measures. Excuse me, he is not answering my question, Chair. Well, let me add something regarding Chai Wan and Wong Tai Sin. They were not included in the areas. Well, I think Wong Tai Sin was included. I can double check that, but indeed Chai Wan was not included because it is an above ground station. Usually it would not encounter flooding. For Sunchoy Garden, outside there is an open area. On that day, many rainfall came in. So we will definitely review the situation in Chai Wan. Because I understand that you can review that because I think Wong Tai Sin was not included either. I now know that the contingency plans relate to the suspension of service mainly, and I think suspension arrangements were implemented effectively. But regarding repairs in tunnel sections, when there is water in those sections, are there any guidelines or were there any plans before? If not, will you formulate such guidelines for repairs to be conducted in rain? Thank you. Mr. Lee, please. Thank you. As said, we have provided additional facilities such as diesel-driven water pumps, water boats, and drainage clog clearing tools. We will provide them before this rainy season to employees. We'll also have drills with employees. So you will formulate the relevant guidelines in future. Yes? Well, I think Mr. Jing also asked if there were such guidelines right now. If there aren't, whether there will be relevant guidelines in future. Thank you. Well, we do have some internal guidelines we will review from time to time and enhance them if necessary. Thank you, Mr. Jing. Well, I think they didn't say explicitly whether for repairs conducted under tunnel sections in rain, but they did talk about risk assessments being conducted. Well, in fact, on that very night, Wong Tai Sin Station, when employees were undertaking repairs, it was still black rainstorm signal. And afterwards, we found out that there was unprecedented rainfall in Wong Tai Sin. At the time, the employees relied on the 1.2 meter high floodboards to ensure there won't be ingress of floodwater. But according to data available that night, in some areas the level of water has gone beyond 1 meter. So how can you make sure water level won't go beyond the level of the floodboards? If they go over floodboards, the tunnel sections would become confined spaces. How can you think that it would be safe for people to go inside those sections to undertake repairs? Thank you. Well, in that evening, that's what we found out afterwards, of course, that they knew there won't be further ingress of floodwater because they have put up the floodboards. But of course, if there is further rainfall, whether the floodgates or floodboards can prevent further ingress of water, we don't know that, but then that was the judgment that the employees made. We do have some guidelines at the moment, but they were more general. In the light of the experience on this, we found out that the weather condition could get worse, so we can definitely enhance the relevant guidelines. Regarding personal protective equipment, I have consulted the Fire Services Department and the Drainage Services Department. If they have to deploy officers to flooded areas, they will provide safety rope and life vests. Is it possible that you can provide such equipment to your employees in future? Well, we do have some of the items that we are planning to purchase, but we will definitely draw reference from the equipment used by other departments to see if we need to perhaps purchase safety ropes. Well, of course, for people who have to go into immersed sections, safety ropes would most definitely be desirable. Well, Mr. Lee, you have something to add? Yes. Of course, we have to ensure the safety of employees. We will, if necessary, ask for assistance from the Fire Services Department. But beforehand, you need to make sure your employees get adequate protection. Yes, of course. Thank you. Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. Thank you, Chair. Of course, extreme weather conditions would impact the transportation services. Before, the situation wouldn't get as bad as this. Indeed. But then we need to have this in mind. We need to make sure there is an alert system for typhoons. We need to formulate measures. The Hong Kong Observatory would issue typhoon signals based on scientific analyses. and the government has accordingly formulated arrangements for people to not go to work or not go to school, that they should stay at home under certain typhoon signals. This is common sense. So when there are special circumstances, when they are stranded, when passengers are stranded in MTR stations, that is of course undesirable. But I think we have to accept that this is for the safety of passengers. We shouldn't risk citizen safety. Some have said that if MTR can make a judgment that it is safe for service to be maintained in open sections so as to disperse the crowds, I think this saying is not based on any scientific evidence. We have to ensure the safety of both passengers and staff members. You can't risk the safety of staff members. It's not just about MTR service, it's also about the operations of buses and taxis. I am a representative of transport sector, as the chairman is the member of the transport sector. I know that the chairman should know this. So I think it is important for the MTRCL to learn from this experience. From an engineering perspective, floodboards would only block a certain level of water. They may not withstand larger volumes. So, have you learned from this situation in terms of flood dispersal? Have you strengthened your water pumping capabilities? Is it the case that stations will still be flooded? It's just that you will be able to buy more time to implement other measures. That's about it for my questions, but I would like to emphasize that some media reports are unfair. One or two photos would not show the efforts made by staff members. One photo alone, with that they say that the MTRCL disregards the welfare of staff members. This is unfair to the management of the MTR. We have to recognize the efforts of the MTR staff members who were there to undertake emergency repairs. The situation in Wong Tai Sin Station was indeed quite bad, but they have managed to resume service very soon after. I again think that we should recognize the efforts of staff members. Thank you.
I think Dr. Low is only making some comments. Still, I think the government needs to do something. Now, before the typhoon number signal 8, the observatory will first give warnings, and so people should go home and stay there. But then nowadays, people think that typhoon signal number 8 means an extra day off, so they go around on the street and they expect public transport services to be provided. So I think the government needs to do more publicity and public education here. Otherwise, we'll never be able to address this issue. Next, Mr. Kenneth Lau. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, we're seeing climate change and we're seeing more extreme weather bringing about damages. Now, for the September torrential rain, and then in October we had Typhoon Koinun, and the MTRCL is a public transport operator, so it needs to step up its measures in coping with extreme weather. And I support the decision to put in place additional measures. Now, in paragraph 12 of the paper, it says that the MTRCL will strengthen contingency plan and passenger care for those stranded stations, including providing drinking water, snacks, and so on. Now, when there's typhoon number 9 hoisted, will you provide temporary rest areas and maybe provide some chairs or some communication facilities so passengers can take a rest there and also receive the latest information about the railway services? Now, there's the MTR mobile, and MTR also has a Facebook. And you say that in these emergencies, you will disseminate information through these channels and online. And apart from that, would you also consider WeChat and Weibo as channels for disseminating information? So you could also cater to passengers, say, coming from the mainland. Ms. Young, thank you for your suggestions, Mr. Lau. We already have some ideas in mind, and we'll certainly consider various suggestions. Now, as to which stations where we'll stop the train services, we'll consider the bigger stations, say, with sitting areas, and maybe also the station is linked up with some shopping malls, so that will give passengers more choices. On the channel of information dissemination, yes, we've heard your suggestions. We'll see if there's need to add other channels. For operations control center, the staff there already have to, cope with various channels. So we'll see if there is spare capacity to add further channels, especially those that are popular. Anything else from you, Mr. Lau? No. Thank you. So we've completed the first round of questions and answers. 2 members have pressed the button. For second round, 3 minutes each, Mr. Chan Siu-hong and then Mr. Gary Chang. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a suggestion, make a comment and ask a question. Paragraph 10 of the paper. Service arrangement during typhoons. Now, you say you consider the design of railway services, you consider past experiences where there have been incidents, and also you will consider the risk brought about by typhoons that may jeopardize the safe operation of the railway and affect the safety of passengers, staff, and the railway system. Yes, I agree, you need to take it in mind. I think the media shouldn't really publicize messages. Well, the media need to publicize messages to avoid overloading the system. At the same time, we need to consider the safety of passengers and staff. Now, my question is, for the existing mechanism, if there is suspension for more than 31 minutes, then there may be a fine imposed on the MTRCL. The Secretary for Transport and Logistics said on some occasions that after this incident, they will wait for the MTRCL to complete a review and the government to complete an investigation. And then the government may decide, say, for the suspension of the Wong Tai Sin Station or other short suspension of railway services. They will see if they will find the MTRCL. So I think it's about the interpretation of suspension of services due to man-made factors. For the typhoon in October, that's a straightforward case. But what about the torrential rain incident in September? Would the penalty system be invoked? Deputy Secretary, I will first say a few words and then the Transport Department could explain in further detail about this arrangement of refunding the fare some fines and so on. Now that's focused on acts taken by staff that's within the control of the MTRCL. But for a situation beyond the control of the MTRCL, such as inclement weather, usually is not covered under the penalties mechanism. I think I'll ask the Transport Department to respond to the 2 incidents mentioned by Mr. Chen. Ms. Chair. Thank you. Now, if there's an exceedance of 31 minutes in terms of performance and it's because of fault on the part of the MTRCL, then there will be a fine imposed. And for the September incident, it's the cause was inclement weather. So therefore, we would not classify this incident as that caused by the MTRCL. That's why it is not included in the penalty mechanism. Yes, I do see that. But then, of course, at first it was inclement weather. It started it all. But then there's a flood water going into the Wong Tai Sin station. But already, they already have measures in place such as floodgates. Let's say if the management and staff of MTRCL were able to install the floodgates, or even the flood door, close the flood door quickly, then they may be able to prevent the flood. So is it because there's improper management, or maybe they did not take such a scenarios into account in their contingency plan? So that's why we need some clarification here. Yes, of course, MTR staff were dedicated. They worked around the clock to repair the facilities. But could the damage be prevented in the first place? And what are the considerations that you think that the incidents could not have been prevented? Well, I think the administration must have formed a view. They could give you a reply in writing. Okay? Two other members have pressed the button to speak for the second time. I wish to allow them to speak. So I'll extend the meeting by 50 minutes first. And after Dr. Lo Wai Kwok speaks, I'll adjourn the meetings. Next, Mr. Gary Chang, 3 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, when I want to talk about railway services when the typhoon signal is 9 or above. In the past 5 years, we've seen more incidents of extreme weather. From 2019 to 2024, there were 3 incidents where the typhoon number 9 was hoisted, and altogether the signal was hoisted for 20 hours. In some cases, the signal was hoisted in the middle of the night. Of course, there's no railway service, but 12 hours of railway services were affected. So over 5 years, that means on average 2 hours or so each year. So do we want to take the risk? Because for that 2 hours or 12 hours in 5 years, we want to make sure railway services could be operated. Because for risk management and assessment, perhaps it's not to cater for such a scenario. I think it's not reasonable. I hope the MTRCL will stay professional here, and I hope the government will also help to explain to the public this is not worth taking all these measures just for the 2 hours of railway operation. Now, when initially when the railway services were commenced, they were operated even during typhoon signal number 9 or 10, but the arrangement changed because there were incidents. So from the point of view of safety and professionalism, it's not reasonable to require railway services to be operated when the condition is not right. Now, during extreme weather, our frontline staff worked really hard, and I appreciate that. But then, so for the management, they need to stay calm, because it's not all just about emphasis. It's about professional judgment and assessment. Now, you have seen it, all industrial accidents, the workers involved worked with enthusiasm. They did not try to put themselves in danger just because they were being dedicated to their work. So, yes, I can see the management does take care for their staff. So it's really for the management to stay calm. It's not just about working with enthusiasm. It's about whether something is worth doing. Whether it's the case of operating rail services during typhoon or conducting immersion repair in dangerous situation. Well, so that's just advice to you. Now, you said that railway services in open sections will be suspended during typhoon signal number 9. Now, when the typhoon signal changes from 8 to 9, it's not that bad yet, so there should be enough time for you to send passengers to a safe place. So you need to keep your service in operation under the circumstance, I think it's reasonable. And it's about the question of whether the public think of typhoon signal number 8 means an extra day off. Is the government needs to do some more publicity there. Thank you.
問到
Dr. Low. Thank you, Chair. According to the information provided by the MTRCL, they will implement more flood improvement measures at the more vulnerable spots. It is indeed very important, but then the thing is we would always have floods that floodgates can't handle. For example, in Wong Tai Sin Station, after your review, would you have to perhaps have more pumping equipment in place to deal with the flooding problem? Thank you, Chair. I apologize. I forgot to answer this part of the question. We do have some new equipment to remove water. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Yes. We would do more in both flood prevention as well as water removal. We have water pumps in both stations and tunnel sections, apart from electric pumps. We have diesel-driven water pumps so that we will not have to rely on electricity or power supply for water pumps. That would definitely help with our water removal capabilities. We will also let staff members know how to better protect themselves. We hope that in mid this year, we can formulate more improvement measures once we have completed our study. Thank you. I think apart from implementing contingency plans on the part of the MTRCL, the administration should think about what to do before this rainy season or typhoon season, how to improve the drainage system. I think we require a comprehensive approach. And it was said by Mr. Gary Zheng that Wong Tai Sin was not included in the vulnerable area in MTRCL study. So we can see that it's due to flooding on the outside that has caused the problem. So we really have to review the drainage system. All right. That's it for the Q&A session. I would like to thank the officials and the representatives of the MTRCL for attending the meeting. Thank you.